The radio crackled with static and desperation. "Control, this is Bravo 6. We are pinned down. I repeat, we are pinned down." Staff Sergeant Martinez pressed his back against the crumbling concrete wall, feeling the vibrations of incoming mortar rounds shake dust from the ceiling above. His team of 6 Navy SEALs had been conducting a routine reconnaissance mission in the mountain villages of eastern Afghanistan when everything went sideways. What intelligence had described as a light Taliban presence turned out to be a fully entrenched enemy position with mortars, machine guns, and enough fighters to overwhelm even the most elite special operations unit. The response from command came through with crushing finality. "Bravo 6, nearest air support is 43 minutes out. Hold your position." 43 minutes. Martinez closed his eyes and calculated the mathematics of survival. With their current ammunition reserves and the intensity of enemy fire, they had maybe 15 minutes before being overrun. The Taliban fighters knew the terrain, had superior numbers, and were closing in from 3 directions. Through the broken window, Martinez could see muzzle flashes dancing like deadly fireflies across the mountainside. Petty Officer Chen crawled over, blood seeping through his sleeve. "Sarge, what's the play?" The young SEAL's voice carried the weight of unspoken understanding. They all knew the odds. Martinez keyed his radio again, voice steady despite the chaos erupting around them. "Control, we need immediate air support. Grid coordinates November Delta 7742. We have enemy mortars at elevation 3,000 feet, machine gun nests at bearing 270, and approximately 30 hostiles advancing on our position." The silence that followed felt heavier than the incoming artillery. Then, cutting through the static like a blade through silk, came a voice that would change everything. It was calm, confident, and unmistakably female. "Bravo 6, this is Viper 2-1. I copy your coordinates. Be advised, I am 2 minutes out and coming in hot." Martinez exchanged glances with his team. 2 minutes. Impossible. The nearest airbase was over an hour away, and besides, who the hell was Viper 2-1? The call sign wasn't in any of their briefing materials. "Viper 2-1, say again your location," Martinez radioed back, ducking as another mortar round exploded 20 meters from their position. The building shook, sending cascades of debris across the floor. Through the smoke and dust, he could hear the Taliban fighters getting closer, their voices echoing off the mountain walls as they coordinated their final assault. Time was running out, and now they had a phantom pilot claiming impossible arrival times. The mystery deepened as the sound of approaching death grew louder with each passing second. Captain Alessandra Phoenix Reyes had been flying combat missions for 8 years, but this morning started like any other routine patrol. Her F-16 Fighting Falcon cut through the thin mountain air at 28,000 feet, the canopy offering an unobstructed view of the Hindu Kush mountain range stretching endlessly toward the horizon. The aircraft responded to her touch like an extension of her own body, every control input precise, every system operating within perfect parameters. She had earned her call sign Phoenix, not through some dramatic rebirth story, but through her uncanny ability to appear when situations seemed hopeless, rising from tactical disasters to deliver salvation. Born in El Paso to a family of mechanics, Alessandra had grown up with grease under her fingernails and the sound of aircraft engines as her lullaby. Her father owned a small aviation repair shop near Fort Bliss, and she had spent countless hours watching him rebuild everything from crop dusters to decommissioned military trainers. By age 12, she could identify aircraft by engine sound alone. By 16, she was rebuilding carburetors and troubleshooting electrical systems that stumped mechanics twice her age. The path to military aviation hadn't been easy. Flight training instructors questioned whether a 5'4" woman from the border could handle the physical demands of fighter aircraft. She proved them wrong by graduating top of her class, mastering aerial combat maneuvers that left her male counterparts struggling to keep pace. But respect came slowly in the fighter pilot community. Even now, After hundreds of combat hours, she occasionally caught the sideways glances and hushed conversations that questioned whether women belonged in the cockpit of America's most advanced fighters. This morning's patrol had been standard, a routine flight path along the Pakistan border, maintaining air superiority and providing overwatch for ground operations below. The war in Afghanistan had become predictable in its unpredictability, with Taliban forces conducting hit-and-run attacks before melting back into the mountainous terrain. Alessandra monitored multiple radio frequencies, staying ready for the call that could redirect her mission from routine patrol to combat operations. The F-16's radar swept continuously, painting a picture of empty airspace and peaceful valleys that masked the deadly reality playing out on the ground below. Then came the frantic radio transmission that would transform routine into legend. The distress call cut through radio chatter like a scream in the night. "Control, this is Bravo 6. We are pinned down. I repeat, we are pinned down." Alessandra immediately switched to the emergency frequency, her training kicking in as she absorbed the tactical situation. 6 Navy SEALs surrounded by superior enemy forces, ammunition running low, air support 43 minutes away. She checked her navigation display. The coordinates placed the firefight directly below her current position, hidden somewhere in the maze of valleys and ridgelines that defined this unforgiving landscape. Standard protocol demanded she maintain patrol altitude and await orders from command. Air Force regulations strictly prohibited solo intervention in ground combat situations without proper authorization and tactical coordination. The bureaucracy of modern warfare required multiple command levels to approve close air support missions, ensuring proper identification of friendly forces and minimizing risk of civilian casualties. But Alessandra had seen too many good soldiers die while waiting for permission to save them. She banked the F-16 into a steep dive, feeling the familiar sensation of G-forces pressing her deep into the ejection seat. The aircraft's engine roared as she pushed the throttle forward, trading altitude for speed and time. Through her heads-up display, she could see the enemy positions taking shape, thermal signatures revealing machine gun nests carved into the mountainside, mortar teams operating from concealed positions, and advancing infantry using the terrain to mask their approach toward the besieged SEAL team. The decision to break protocol wasn't made lightly. Phoenix understood the career implications of unauthorized engagement, potential court-martial, loss of flight status, disgrace within the fighter-pilot community that had taken years to accept her. But looking down at those coordinates, knowing 6 of America's finest warriors were fighting for their lives while bureaucrats debated response protocols, the choice became crystal clear. Some situations demanded action, not approval. Keying her radio, she transmitted with calm authority. "Bravo 6, this is Viper 2-1. I copy your coordinates. Be advised, I am 2 minutes out and coming in hot." The silence that followed spoke volumes. Ground forces didn't expect miracles, especially not from unknown call signs operating outside normal command structure. But Phoenix had built her reputation on delivering the impossible, and today would be no different. Martinez couldn't believe what he was hearing. 2 minutes out. The mathematics didn't work, even if an F-16 had been loitering directly overhead, which radar would have detected. The minimum safe engagement distance for close air support required precise targeting solutions that took longer than 2 minutes to develop. Either Viper 2-1 was operating with pre-planned strike packages, which seemed impossible given the spontaneous nature of their situation, or this pilot was planning something far outside standard operating procedures. Viper 2-1, be advised we have friendlies at grid November Delta 7742. Enemy positions are danger close to our location, Martinez transmitted, using the military terminology that indicated hostile forces were within the minimum safe distance for airstrikes. The building shook again as another mortar round impacted nearby, this one close enough to shower the interior with concrete fragments. Through the smoke, he could see Chen applying pressure bandages to Johnson's leg wound, while Ramirez maintained suppressive fire through a broken window. The Taliban fighters had clearly studied SEAL tactics, using coordinated fire and movement to systematically reduce the Americans' defensive perimeter. Martinez counted at least 4 different weapon signatures: AK-47 assault rifles, a heavy machine gun that sounded like a Soviet-era DSHK, mortars that were walking closer with each salvo, and what appeared to be rocket-propelled grenades based on the distinctive whoosh-boom signature. The enemy commander understood that time favored the attackers. Every minute brought them closer to overwhelming the SEAL position through sheer volume of fire. "Copy, danger close, Bravo 6. Phoenix understands the situation," came the reply, and Martinez felt something shift in his chest. Phoenix. Somehow that call sign carried weight, even if he couldn't place why. The voice remained steady, professional, but underneath the military formality was something else: absolute confidence that bordered on arrogance. Whoever Viper 2-1 was, they spoke with the authority of someone who had faced impossible odds before and emerged victorious. The sound came first, a low rumble that vibrated through the mountain stone, different from the chaotic cacophony of small arms fire and explosions. It grew steadily louder, transforming from subtle vibration to unmistakable roar of a military jet engine operating at full power. Phoenix had done the calculations during her dive. Standard close air support doctrine required maintaining safe altitude and distance to prevent friendly fire incidents. Laser-guided munitions needed time for target acquisition and verification. GPS-guided bombs required coordinate verification and approval from multiple command levels. Radio-guided missiles demanded complex coordination between ground controllers and air assets. None of these options would save Bravo 6 in time. Instead, she opted for the most dangerous tactic in modern air combat: a gun run at minimum altitude. The F-16's M61 Vulcan cannon could deliver precisely targeted firepower without the explosive radius of bombs or missiles, but it required flying directly through enemy fire at altitudes where a single well-placed shot could bring down the aircraft. The margin for error was measured in meters, not kilometers, and the pilot had to visually identify targets while managing the aircraft at speeds that turned reaction time into an academic concept. Banking around the mountain peak, Phoenix acquired visual contact with the battlefield below. The SEAL position was immediately identifiable: a cluster of damaged buildings surrounded by enemy muzzle flashes winking like malevolent stars across the landscape. Her targeting computer painted the tactical picture in stark detail. 6 heat signatures clustered in defensive positions, 30-plus enemy signatures advancing from multiple directions, and the unmistakable thermal bloom of mortar positions nested in the rocky outcroppings above. The F-16 screamed down the valley at 500 feet, well below the surrounding mountain peaks. Enemy tracers began reaching up toward her aircraft like deadly fireworks, but Phoenix held her course steady. The heads-up display showed airspeed climbing past 400 knots as the Fighting Falcon dove toward its prey. At this altitude and speed, she would have exactly 1 pass to neutralize enough enemy positions to shift the tactical balance. Miss, and Bravo 6 would be overrun before she could circle around for another attempt. "Bravo 6, this is Phoenix. Guns, guns, guns. Keep your heads down," she transmitted, her voice carrying the calm authority of someone about to deliver precise violence from the sky. The M61 Vulcan cannon erupted with mechanical fury, sending 20mm depleted uranium rounds downrange at 6,000 rounds per minute. Phoenix walked the gunfire across the Taliban positions with surgical precision, the aircraft's flight computer automatically adjusting for windage, altitude, and target movement. The first burst caught the heavy machine gun nest, silencing the weapon that had been the primary threat to the SEAL team. The second burst found the mortar team, secondary explosions indicating direct hits on ammunition stockpiles. Martinez watched in stunned amazement as the F-16 pulled out of its attack run mere 100 feet above their position, close enough to see the pilot's helmet in the cockpit. The Taliban fire that had been steadily intensifying suddenly became sporadic, confused. The coordination that had marked their assault dissolved into individual survival instincts as fighters scrambled for cover from the aerial predator hunting them from above. "Jesus Christ," whispered Petty Officer Chen, staring through the broken window at the carnage outside. The Taliban positions that had been methodically advancing were now smoking craters carved into the mountainside. Bodies lay scattered across the rocky terrain, and the survivors were retreating toward deeper cover, their assault momentum completely broken. But the most impressive element wasn't the destruction, it was the precision. Every round had found enemy targets, while leaving the SEAL position completely untouched. Phoenix's voice came through the radio with professional calm. "Bravo 6, this is Viper 2-1. You have approximately 30 seconds before I make another pass. Mark any remaining targets with infrared strobes if available." Martinez fumbled for his signaling device, painting laser designations on the remaining enemy positions. The F-16 had bought them precious time, but Taliban reinforcements would undoubtedly be mobilizing. This firefight was far from over. Banking around for her second pass, Phoenix assessed the battlefield damage through her targeting pod. The initial gun run had eliminated approximately 60% of the enemy positions, but scattered groups of Taliban fighters were regrouping in the deeper recesses of the mountain terrain. The SEAL team's tactical situation had improved dramatically, but they remained outnumbered and surrounded. More importantly, her fuel situation was becoming critical. The high-speed, low-altitude flight profile burned aviation fuel at an exponential rate. The tactical radio frequencies erupted with confused chatter as various command elements tried to understand what was happening. "Viper 2-1, this is Mountain Control. You are not authorized for close air support in that grid square. Return to patrol altitude immediately." The voice carried the bureaucratic authority of staff officers operating from comfortable command centers hundreds of miles from the fighting. Phoenix ignored the transmission, focusing instead on the life-or-death mathematics playing out below. Her second gun run targeted the remaining mortar positions, walking cannon fire across the ridgeline where Taliban spotters were calling in indirect fire. The 20mm rounds chewed through rock and flesh with equal efficiency, silencing the artillery threat that had been the primary danger to Bravo 6. Pulling up from the attack run, Phoenix could see Taliban fighters streaming away from the valley, their assault broken by the sudden intervention of American air power. "Bravo 6, this is Phoenix. Area is suppressed but not clear. Recommend immediate extraction to primary rally point," she transmitted, already calculating fuel reserves and distance to friendly territory. The F-16's low fuel warning light glowed amber on her instrument panel, enough for one more pass if needed, but not enough for extended loitering. Martinez acknowledged the transmission while coordinating his team's movement toward the extraction point. Their tactical situation transformed from desperate to manageable by 90 seconds of perfectly executed close air support. The aftermath brought questions that rippled through command structures like shockwaves. How had an F-16 appeared over a firefight with no advance coordination? Why had Viper 2-1 engaged without proper authorization? Most importantly, who was Phoenix, and how had she delivered such precise fire support in conditions that would challenge even the most experienced combat pilots? Colonel Rebecca Hayes sat behind her desk at Bagram Airfield, staring at the after-action report that had landed on her desk like an unexploded bomb. As the commanding officer of the 455th Air Expeditionary Wing, she had seen her share of unusual incidents, but this one defied standard categories. Captain Alessandra Reyes, call sign Phoenix, had violated approximately 17 different military regulations while saving 6 Navy SEALs from certain death. The bureaucratic side of Hayes wanted to initiate disciplinary proceedings immediately. The warrior side of her wanted to pin a medal on Phoenix's chest. The knock on her office door interrupted her contemplation. "Enter," Hayes called, and Captain Reyes walked in with the confident bearing that marked all fighter pilots, regardless of gender. Phoenix stood at attention, her flight suit bearing the subdued patches of someone who had earned her place through skill rather than politics. Hayes had reviewed Reyes's service record thoroughly, distinguished flying cross, 2 air medals, and a reputation for precision that bordered on the supernatural. "Captain Reyes, please sit down," Hayes said, gesturing toward the chair across from her desk. Phoenix maintained perfect military posture, but Hayes could see the subtle tension around her eyes. They both knew this conversation would determine whether Phoenix's career continued or ended in disgrace. "Tell me about this morning's mission, in your own words." Phoenix's account was crisp, factual, devoid of the emotional justification that might have complicated the legal aspects of her actions. She had heard the distress call, assessed the tactical situation, and determined that immediate intervention was necessary to prevent loss of American lives. The decision to engage had been hers alone, made in full knowledge of the potential consequences. She accepted full responsibility for violating established protocols. "Captain, you understand that unauthorized engagement could result in court-martial proceedings?" Hayes asked, studying Phoenix's reaction carefully. The younger officer's expression never wavered, though Hayes noticed the slight tightening of her jaw muscles. "Yes, ma'am. I understand the potential consequences of my actions." The response carried no defiance, no attempt at justification, just professional acknowledgement of military reality. Hayes leaned back in her chair, considering the impossible balance between following regulations and supporting the warriors who put their lives on the line every day. The by-the-book answer was clear. Phoenix had violated direct orders and engaged in unauthorized combat operations. But Hayes had also read the radio intercepts from Bravo 6, heard the gratitude in Martinez's voice as he reported successful extraction with 0 friendly casualties. Colonel Hayes had spent 22 years navigating the complexities of military leadership, balancing the competing demands of mission accomplishment and troop welfare. She understood that great commanders occasionally had to protect their best warriors from the very system they served. Looking across the desk at Captain Reyes, Hayes made a decision that would ripple through both their careers in ways neither could anticipate. "Captain, you will report to Major Williams for a comprehensive debrief on yesterday's engagement. Your actions will be reviewed by the appropriate authorities." Phoenix nodded, preparing to stand, but Hayes held up her hand. "However, I want you to know that 6 American servicemen went home to their families because of your decision. That carries weight in my assessment." The slight relaxation in Phoenix's shoulders was the only indication that the words had any impact. Hayes dismissed Phoenix with instructions to remain available for further questioning, but privately she was already working the phones. The Pentagon needed to understand what had really happened in that valley, and more importantly, they needed to understand that they had warriors like Phoenix operating in their ranks. The challenge would be framing the narrative properly, emphasizing the successful rescue while minimizing the regulatory violations. The story of Phoenix's unauthorized rescue mission spread through Bagram Airfield like wildfire, taking on mythical proportions with each retelling. Maintenance crews whispered about the pilot who had appeared from nowhere to save a SEAL team. Ground forces shared embellished accounts of impossible precision and timing. The legend grew with each conversation, transforming a tactical decision into something approaching folklore. But Phoenix herself remained focused on the technical aspects of her performance. In the privacy of her quarters, she reviewed gun camera footage frame by frame, analyzing every burst, every maneuver, every split-second decision that had determined the outcome. The engagement had lasted 90 seconds, but those 90 seconds contained enough variables to study for weeks. Weapon system performance, aircraft handling characteristics, target acquisition procedures, threat assessment protocols. Every element demanded careful analysis to improve future performance. Staff Sergeant Martinez found himself unable to concentrate on routine tasks. The memory of that F-16 screaming down the valley replayed constantly in his mind, along with the voice that had delivered salvation with calm professionalism. His team had faced certain death, and Phoenix had materialized like an avenging angel to shift the tactical balance decisively in their favor. The precision of her gunfire, the audacity of her approach, the perfect timing of her intervention, it all seemed impossible in retrospect. The debriefing sessions began immediately, with intelligence officers and tactical analysts dissecting every second of the engagement. Phoenix answered their questions with clinical precision, providing technical details about aircraft performance, weapon effectiveness, and enemy response patterns. She described her decision-making process without emotion, treating the life-or-death situation like an academic exercise in applied physics and tactical theory. Major Williams, the wing's chief of operations, found himself impressed despite his initial skepticism. Phoenix's tactical analysis was flawless, her understanding of close air support doctrine encyclopedic, her ability to adapt standard procedures to emergency situations exceptional. The unauthorized nature of her intervention created administrative headaches, but the results spoke for themselves. Mission accomplished with zero friendly casualties and minimal collateral damage. Word of the incident reached higher command levels within hours. Pentagon analysts studied gun camera footage with the intensity of art critics examining a masterpiece. The precision of Phoenix's fire, delivered at impossible altitude and speed, challenged conventional wisdom about close air support capabilities. Her ability to discriminate between friendly and enemy forces in a complex tactical environment demonstrated skills that were supposed to require extensive coordination and planning. The unofficial investigation revealed disturbing gaps in air support coverage across the theater of operations. Multiple special operations teams were operating beyond the effective range of designated close air support assets, relying on response times that frequently exceeded tactical requirements. Phoenix's intervention had exposed systemic weaknesses in a military structure that prioritized procedure over operational effectiveness. 3 days after the incident, Phoenix received orders to report to the wing commander's office. The summons carried ominous implications: career-ending disciplinary action, transfer to non-combat assignments, or worse. She walked across the flight line with the same calm confidence that had marked her unauthorized rescue mission, prepared to accept whatever consequences her actions had generated. The meeting lasted 30 minutes, but its implications would resonate for years. Colonel Hayes had spent those 3 days building a careful case, documenting the tactical necessity of Phoenix's intervention while minimizing the regulatory violations. The official record would show successful close air support delivery with minor procedural irregularities, nothing more. Unofficially, Hayes had sent a message up the chain of command about the kind of warriors the Air Force needed to cultivate and protect. Phoenix emerged from the meeting with her career intact and her reputation enhanced. The reprimand would remain in her file as a reminder of the importance of following proper procedures, but the commendation for exceptional performance under combat conditions would carry more weight in future promotion boards. Hayes had walked the fine line between accountability and advocacy, with the skill of someone who understood that great leaders sometimes had to bend rules to protect great followers. The tactical community began studying Phoenix's engagement as a case study in adaptive close air support. Flight schools incorporated her techniques into advanced training curricula, teaching pilots how to deliver precision fires in complex environments. The unauthorized nature of her intervention became a footnote, overshadowed by the tactical innovation she had demonstrated under extreme pressure. Within a week, Phoenix was back on routine patrol missions, but the atmosphere around her had changed subtly. Ground controllers who had previously treated her with professional courtesy now spoke with obvious respect. Maintenance crews took extra care with her aircraft preparation. Fellow pilots asked technical questions about gun-run procedures with genuine interest rather than condescending skepticism. The transformation wasn't universal or immediate. Some officers still questioned whether Phoenix's success had been skill or luck, whether her tactical innovation represented genuine capability or dangerous improvisation. The fighter-pilot community had always been conservative, valuing proven procedures over individual initiative. But the results were impossible to argue with 6 Americans alive who should have been casualties. Mission success, where conventional doctrine predicted failure. Martinez requested permission to visit Bagram Airfield, ostensibly for equipment coordination, but actually to thank the pilot who had saved his team. The meeting was brief, professional, but carried emotional weight that neither participant acknowledged directly. Phoenix accepted his gratitude with the same calm demeanor she brought to everything else, treating the life-saving intervention as routine application of tactical principles rather than heroic action worthy of special recognition. The incident report worked its way through multiple command levels, each adding their own analysis and interpretation. Pentagon strategists saw implications for future air support doctrine. Budget analysts calculated cost-effectiveness ratios for rapid response capabilities. Politicians found talking points about military effectiveness and warrior spirit. But for the 6 SEALs of Bravo 6, the analysis was much simpler. They were alive because one pilot had been willing to risk everything to do the right thing when bureaucracy demanded inaction. The tactical innovations Phoenix had demonstrated began appearing in training manuals and operational procedures. Her technique of using terrain masking to achieve surprise, her method of target identification in complex environments, her ability to deliver precision fires while maintaining aircraft survivability, all became standard curriculum in advanced fighter pilot training. The unauthorized engagement that could have ended her career, instead, became a template for adaptive tactics in asymmetric warfare. But success brought its own challenges. Phoenix found herself assigned to increasingly complex missions, her reputation creating expectations that bordered on the impossible. Ground commanders specifically requested her for close air support, believing her presence guaranteed mission success. Fellow pilots studied her techniques with mixture of admiration and resentment, recognizing superior skill while questioning whether her methods were replicable or sustainable. The pressure of elevated expectations weighed heavily during subsequent missions. Every tactical decision was scrutinized through the lens of her previous success, every engagement compared to the impossible standard she had set over the mountains of eastern Afghanistan. Phoenix understood that reputation was both asset and burden, opening doors while creating obligations that could prove impossible to fulfill. Months later, sitting in the cockpit of her F-16 30,000 feet above the same mountains where she had first earned the respect of the special operations community, Phoenix reflected on the strange trajectory her career had taken. A single decision made in 90 seconds had transformed her from competent pilot to legendary figure, but the core mission remained unchanged. Somewhere below, American warriors were counting on air support to bring them home safely. Everything else was just paperwork. The radio crackled with another distress call, different coordinates but familiar desperation. "Control, this is Charlie 7. We are taking heavy fire and need immediate air support." Phoenix checked her position, calculated fuel and ammunition status, and began her descent toward another impossible rescue. The legend of Viper 2-1 was just beginning, built one desperate radio call at a time. Years would pass before the full implications of that morning engagement became clear. Phoenix's tactical innovation would influence air support doctrine for the next generation of fighter pilots. Her willingness to prioritize mission accomplishment over regulatory compliance would become case study material in military leadership courses. Most importantly, her example would inspire other pilots to trust their training and instincts when conventional procedures failed to meet operational requirements. The SEALs never forgot the voice that had materialized from empty sky to deliver salvation when all seemed lost. Martinez would tell the story countless times throughout his career, each retelling emphasizing different aspects: the precision of the gunfire, the audacity of the approach, the calm professionalism under extreme pressure. But the core message never changed. When everything else failed, Phoenix had been there. The F-16 that had screamed through that valley below radar altitude was eventually retired from service, its airframe logged with thousands of combat hours and dozens of successful missions. Phoenix moved on to other aircraft, other conflicts, other desperate radio calls that required immediate intervention. But that particular airplane, serial number 892137, would always be remembered as the Fighting Falcon that proved air support was never too far away when the right pilot was listening. The tactical manual updates that resulted from Phoenix's engagement were subtle but significant. Minimum altitude restrictions were revised to allow for emergency exceptions. Target identification procedures were streamlined to reduce decision-making delays. Most importantly, local commanders were given increased authority to authorize immediate air support without waiting for higher-level approval when American lives were at immediate risk. The mountain valley, where Bravo 6 had made their stand, remained strategically significant throughout the remainder of the Afghan conflict. Other units would fight battles in the same terrain, facing similar tactical challenges against determined enemies. But none would face the hopeless situation that had confronted Martinez and his team, because Phoenix's example had changed how the military approached close air support in complex environments. The legend grew with each mission, each desperate radio call that brought Phoenix screaming down from high altitude to deliver precision salvation. Ground forces began requesting her specifically for complex operations, believing her presence guaranteed mission success. Pentagon analysts studied her techniques, trying to understand how one pilot consistently achieved results that challenged conventional tactical wisdom. But Phoenix remained focused on the fundamental mission, protecting American warriors who found themselves in harm's way. The medals, commendations, and recognition were acknowledgments of success, but the true measure of her worth was counted in lives saved and missions accomplished. Every time she strapped into the cockpit of an F-16, she carried the responsibility of those who depended on air support to bring them home safely. The story of that morning rescue would be told and retold throughout military communities, taking on mythical proportions that sometimes obscured the technical skill and professional competence that had made it possible. Phoenix had become more than just a fighter pilot. She had become a symbol of what was possible when training, courage, and tactical innovation converged at the moment of greatest need. And somewhere in the mountains of Afghanistan, carved into stone and memory, remained the proof of what one pilot could accomplish when the situation demanded everything she had to give.